Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, the Iron Man himself, and yet he had a scare about cardiovascular disease. Franco Colombo, his good friend, died of a heart attack. He's now about largely 80% plant-based. I go every year to the Arnold Sports Festival. I have videos of him talking about. He's now about age 74. Arnold's lookalike was given one of my supplements to help control for man boobs and estrogen dominance. It's called gynecomastia. You'd be shocked at how many bodybuilders who are injecting testosterone that converts into excess estrogen. So don't just use testosterone of any type. Don't use dosages that are inappropriate, but it does get modified properly. So what is it about my oldest client right now? He's now turning 93 this year. Actually, it shows here at 92, so he's going to be turning 94. He has Ray Wilson's Family Fitness in Mexico. He uses advanced therapeutics. He has used over time stem cells. He has used most of the supplements, and I've created over 30 supplements that he's a fan of, many of them. He follows close to a plant-based diet. He exercises, here's the key, 3 times a day. Now, I recommend 3 different types of exercises. He likes to get in the swimming pool. He likes to use weights. He likes to go for walks at the beach. He's in fabulous shape. Maasai tribe. Keep in mind that the Maasai tribe is an example of a group of people that have been purported to be a long-lived people free of cardiovascular disease. But when the medical journals commissioned a doctor to go evaluate them, he forgot to do besides a stress treadmill test, autopsies on those who had died in accidental death. And he did his evaluation because their diet is largely cow milk, cow meat, the blood of these animals, and they do herd their cattle 30 miles a day. So even if they have clogged arteries, their arteries are enlarged and they can push the cholesterol past the cholesterol plaques, and they're still alive. But when those plaques break off, they can die of a heart attack or stroke just as easily as you or I. By the age of 30, their arteries are worse than a 70-year-old in our country. So Maasai tribe, often pointed to by the keto and the paleo people, is not a good example. Although the Kenya runners of Africa, Maasai are also in northern Kenya, I believe. They're very close in regions, but their diet's completely different, even though they have similar genetics. These Kenyans are the greatest runners in the world. Besides the Tarahumara Indians, they eat rice, cornmeal, collard greens, mung, and kidney beans, wheat. It makes up 86% of their diet is plant-based. Only about 14% of their diet is animal. They have very clean arteries. Great example of a free living population. They win most of the marathons in the Olympics each year. Usain Bolt, the world's fastest man, follows a very high carbohydrate diet with a certain amount of animal protein. He eats fruit, mango, apples, pineapple, broccoli as vegetables, yams, which are so good for you. The dumplings, I'm not sure of the recipe for that, probably has some whole grain in it. The pasta, hopefully whole grain and not white. Sandwich, some bread with some egg in there, egg sandwich, beef, fish, and chicken. But he doesn't need the beef, fish, and chicken. Trust me. He just hasn't been coached properly by his coaches. And I will say animal product gives you additional calories, so it reduces likelihood of being hungry. But in our kind of a program, I want you to know that when you compare to the Eskimos, people point the Eskimos as a healthy group, and yet the Eskimos die prematurely from the risk of intradermal bleeding because they have too much fat in their diet from the fatty fish, and they don't live a long life. They have a very miserable life. They have dental problems. They have bone loss from the excess protein. So compare this. Fat of the average Eskimo at the turn of the century was 50% fat. The average American, 40% fat. Americans eat almost as much fat as Eskimos. McDougall recommends 8%, Kepner 5%. I come in probably at about 12 to 15% because I do include a little bit more nuts, seeds, avocados, and olives because I train more. Protein, look at this. This is key. Eskimos eat over 35% protein. I believe part of the main reason why they have such horrible bone health and osteoporosis. All that excess protein causes acidity in the bones, draws calcium, magnesium, zinc out of the bones, and they lose their teeth and their bones are brittle. The Americans consume 20% of calories from protein, still too high. McDougall properly recommends about 12% protein. Dr. Kepner proved you could get as low as 5% protein. My goal is always to get towards 5 and under 10% protein. I don't want to increase protein. I'm a weightlifter. I'm a competitive athlete. I don't want protein to slow me down. Protein is a very inefficient fuel. It burns with a lot of waste product, ammonia and BUN. and leaves creatinine. Is very hard on the kidney and livers. Many American athletes have a lot of kidney disorders and eventually require kidney dialysis. It's a horrible problem that's continuing. Dr. Kempner was able to reverse kidney disease and prevent the need for kidney replacement or kidney dialysis by a low protein rice and fruit diet. Yes, it works. My favorite example is coming up about the people in New Guinea that have 3% fat, 3% protein, and over 97% complex carbohydrates. So never be afraid to increase your complex starch carbohydrates. Understanding what's called food sequencing that Dr. AJ, that Chef AJ and I agree on, sequencing more yellow, green vegetables like McDougall talks about, more fruit and vegetables, potatoes, and then have your higher calorie foods, beans, rice, tortillas, and things like that, nuts and seeds. If you're pursuing losing weight, if you're trying to gain back weight, even John McDougall recently talked about he's eating nut mixes about 3 times a day or so. So nuts and seeds can help you gain weight. I tend to include more beans, nuts, and seeds in my diet when my weight gets too low. And what about carbs? Eskimos, barely 15%, kind of like that crazy keto diet. The only keto diet I accept is a plant-based keto diet, but I won't get into that right now. The American diet, 40% fat. McDougall, not fat, carb, and that's mostly white carbs in the American diet. The McDougall plan, 80% complex carbohydrates, Kempner, 90% starch complex carbohydrates, but they included sugar in the Kempner diet to help control for kidney disorder, and it did not increase worsen the problem of diabetes. My diet, I strive to get to as much as 80-90% of starch carbohydrates because it's a protein sparing effect. Even Lee Haney, one of the world-class bodybuilder weightlifters. Min, can you grab that picture from behind me of Lee Haney? He did an interview with me, and he's an 8-time Mr. Olympiad. He talks about fit at any age and eats a very high 500 grams of carbohydrates a day to get in world-class shape. It's right over there. See that picture with the bodybuilder up above and the below? That one in the frame and in the frame too. Those two, both. Yeah. So it's interesting, but this is a picture of Lee Haney. He's always in contest shape. I think he's now approaching his late 50s, and he advocates a balanced, higher starch-resistant complex carbohydrates, a medium amount of fat, and not excess protein. It's probably about only 80 grams of protein a day, but over 500 grams of carbohydrates, much like McDougall recommends, and myself. Ronnie Coleman, on the other hand, ate a very heavy meat, animal-based diet, very muscular guy, but even Dorian Yates got to eclipse Ronnie Coleman, I believe. They're the 2 biggest guys around. But it was Mike Menser that said you don't have to add extra animal protein to build up a world-class physique. It is training intensity, genetics, and probably only about 40 grams to 80 grams of protein a day. So the fitness level of the Tarahumara Indians, they run 180 miles a day, nonstop, not a day, but when they have their races and their festivals. And look at their diet, mostly vegan, 94%, only about 6% animal foods, beans, corn, squash, panola nuts, chia seeds. Their fiber is about 19 grams of fiber a day, 580 grams of carbohydrate. Again, getting over 500 is the key to good quality health, but particularly the starch-resistant carbohydrates, not the simple carbohydrates. Fat, about 38 grams of fat. John McDougall's probably about 10 to 15 grams of fat. Caldwell Esselstyn's under probably 10 grams of fat a day. I'm somewhere between 30 and 40 grams of fat a day because of the nuts, seeds, avocados, and olives. And I believe there's a lot of benefit from eating walnut. I don't put oil in my food, but I put oil like olive oil on my skin. It absorbs in the skin a very small amount, but it helps keep the skin, the lipo fat layer of the skin, very healthy. Cholesterol, look at that, 136. Remember what I told you, my cholesterol, 137. Women have a little slightly lower cholesterol, 121 in their society. The LDL, 72. Remember I said my LDL was around 70, HDL 32, my HDL is around 40, triglycerides 91, mine was about, I think, 78. I'm right in there with the world's healthiest people, the best fitness people in the world, the greatest endurance runners. And here's one of my favorite examples of the lowest protein diet of any culture in the world. And yet they're muscular, strong people, really good muscle density, 3% protein, 3% fat, 97% complex carbohydrates. Every long-lived culture in the world, like the Okinawans eat a lot of oranges and purple sweet potatoes. The longest lived cultures eat a lot of potatoes, even white potatoes. Peru, they eat a lot of potatoes of various types. You need potatoes in the diet to sustain quality energy.